Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. I have two big tags in one video for you today. I was tagged twice, I think, last week. Once by my good friend Alan from Big Heart Books and Classics, and one by the incredibly well-dressed and awesome Graham Quigley. So I'm going to do both of those tags today. The first of those tags is the How Do You tag. This tag was created by Shawn D. Stanfield. I'll leave a link to his original video down below, as well as a link to Alan's version of this. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a feeling this one's going to be relatively quick, because these are some fairly quick answers for me. So question number one is, do you read more than one book at a time? If yes, what? And then if yes, do you read different books at different times of the day? So my answer is no. I don't usually read more than one book at a time. I'm kind of a one book at a time person, and if I do break that kind of normal routine, it's usually because I'm reading a fiction book and then a nonfiction book at the same time. That's the only exception I probably make. And then probably because I'm involved in a buddy read and it started in a nonfiction book or something like that. Question number two, how do you organize your library? Alphabetically. To go more specifically than that, if you look over my right shoulder in the distance there, the first set of books on your left, the top, those are classic works that date from before the 1700s, and then next to those, going from your left to right as you would read, I have poetry, and then it starts with fiction, and by fiction here I mean novels, and then down here I have short story collections, which are a bit picked through because I'm going to be using some of them later in this video. And then mainly on the bottom of the shelves behind me I have nonfiction related to world history, and then on the section on the shelves to my left, I have biography and history books related to American history, and a small section of fantasy where I've kind of crammed all my fantasy novels. So, and all of that is alphabetical by author. In the case of the history books, it's by subject. Question number three, do you ever have an urge to rearrange your books differently? No. Question number four, what's your favorite small press? That would be, I have two. That would be the Johns Hopkins University Press would be one, and I have lots of books, particularly works of history and biography from the Johns Hopkins University Press. And the second would be the University of Akron Press, and shameless plug here, who published my book many years ago. Question number five, can you recall every book that you own, or do you sometimes look at yourselves and shelves and say, how did that book get here? The answer is yes and no. I don't get surprised when I find books on my shelves, but that doesn't mean I always remember every copy I have. In all honesty, I'm more likely to think I have a book that I don't have than to have a book that I didn't know I had. I think that makes sense. And then question number six, do you collect bookmarks? I really don't. I'm one of those people who loses all kinds of things. I'm notorious for losing pens, and bookmarks are no different. I usually use just random pieces of cardstock or card paper or something like that I find. One thing I did find interesting when thinking about this question on the tag was I looked in the only books where I would have bookmarks kind of permanently, and those would be short story collections, and I found a couple of things I thought were amusing. I use tickets, which are nice cardstock stuff for bookmarks, and those tickets are to be honest with you, a little embarrassing about how old they are sometimes. This is a ticket to a Rush concert, the band Rush, from 1990, that I use as a bookmark in my complete stories of Ernest Hemingway. I looked at my Flannery O'Connor short story collection, and oh wait, sticking with the tickets theme, I'll do that. In my collection of F. Scott Fitzgerald short stories, I have a ticket to, let's see, a Rice football game, Rice versus Northwestern, from many years ago, and then in my collected stories of William Faulkner, oh wait, there it is, I have a ticket to an Astros baseball game from 1990 also, and that ticket was to a game at the Astrodome, where the Astros no longer play at the Astrodome. So there you go. Also, I collected baseball cards for a really long time, And so a lot of my bookmarks are baseball cards, a tiny Frank Viola in my Flannery O'Connor, a Cecil Fielder in my collection of short stories by Ian McEwan, and a Roberto Alomar, in my collection of short stories of John O'Hara. So there you go. That's the How Do You tag. I'm not going to tag anybody in to do this video. I'm going to leave the people I'm going to tag in the next part of this tag video, which is coming up. Okay, so here we go. This is the Ride or Die tag. I was tagged to do this by Graham Quigley over at his channel, The Archive, and the original was done by Ladette M. I will leave a link to her channel and to Graham's channel in the description box down below as well as a list of the prompts. So prompt number 1 in the Ride or Die tag is the BFF book, a book not everyone likes but has been with you from the start. So if I'm thinking of a book that's not all that popular, that's been with me from the start, I have to go back to one of my favorite books of all time, and that's The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. And I've said in several videos in different places that Hemingway will always be kind of an important writer for me because he's kind of the first real, I guess, what I would call literary writer that I got into reading and kind of launched my love of literature through Hemingway's books. Prompt number 2 is Long Drive. What's the ideal book for a long journey? And I'm going to say Dickens on audiobook. This is something I discovered a few years ago that I really like listening to audiobooks while I'm driving, and thanks to apps and the way you can connect your phone to your car, I can listen to the book through the stereo system in my truck or my car. And I've read, I've listened to David Copperfield and Bleak House in that way, and it's just a really good way. I like doing that when I'm driving, and most recently I listened to a lot of Sherlock Holmes stories in the same way. Let's see. Newcomer. Prompt number 3 says Newcomer, a book you read recently that you can't stop talking about. I have 3 here. One is the book of concrete poetry by Chaim Bacher called Transcript, which is really one of the most powerful things I've ever read about the Holocaust. 2, one of my favorite books from last year, The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli. And then 3rd, a book I read in January, Milkman by Anna Burns. Those 3 books are some newcomers that I really, really like. Prompt 4 is The Quiet One, a book you read for when you need peace. This prompt seems to imply rereading, and to be honest with you, I don't really do a lot of rereading. So what I would say here, instead of a specific book, I'll just talk about a style of literature. And for whatever reason, and this I have no idea why, 19th century French literature seems to be that thing, or 19th century French novels seem to be one of those things that really does that for me. I've read Zola, I've read Stendhal, read Flaubert, but as you know, if you pay attention to the my avatar picture and you've watched my videos, Balzac is my favorite, one of my favorite writers. Prompt number 5 is the Going Out book, an ideal book for antisocial social occasions. So for that, I didn't really know exactly what that meant, so I just went with the antisocial theme here, and so I chose a novel by Jean-Paul Sartre, The Age of Reason. This is the first book in a trilogy of his books, which has come to be known, I guess, as Roads to Freedom. I read these books a long time ago. In all honesty, I'd really like to reread them. Maybe one of those things I need to do. But Jean-Paul Sartre is famous for saying, I believe, he's famous for saying, hell is other people, which I'm not sure he meant quite as antisocial as it sounds, but I kind of like that. Prompt number 6 is guilty pleasure books. To be honest with you, at this point in my life, I don't really feel guilty about reading anything, but I guess if I had a guilty pleasure, it would be books about baseball. I have some baseball books. I read them. I have baseball reference books, and greatest teams books and greatest player, and I like looking at those sometimes. Let's see. Prompt number 7 says, a book no one seems to have heard of but you, and I've mentioned this book on my channel several times before. That's Shadow Without a Name by Ignacio Padilla. This is a book that was originally written in Spanish, and it essentially deals with the issue of identity and history and what all that means in relationship to World War II and the attempts to capture and try the Nazi perpetrators of the Holocaust. Book number 8, the book was better. This is where you think the book was actually better than the movie. I'm not saying that this book, Serena by Ron Rash, is a great work of literature, but it is much, much better than the movie was made. And then 9, author, you would read anything they write, and I read, most of the authors I read are no longer living, so they can't write anymore. So, you know, there are lots of authors whose collected works I want to finish or read a lot of, but since they're not actively writing, I'm just going to go with Louise Erdrich because she is currently the writer that I would read whatever she published. As a matter of fact, I recently read her new book and did a review of that. So then the last thing is to tag people. I'm going to tag 2 people. One is one channel is Expedition Through the Pages. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name right now, but I want to tag you to do this. She's kind of a new booktuber, has a really good channel, I think, and so I'd like to see you do this tag. And then Christy Lewis over at Dostoevsky in Space, love to see you do this tag as well. There you go. That's the Ride or Die tag, and that is my 2 Tag Tuesday submission. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.